On today's show, the NBA season is officially over and the Oklahoma City Thunder are champions. What have we learned about what it takes to win a championship? What have we learned from the Thunder? Going to be talking about it all on today's Locked On. It's officially the off-season Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You were locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, born and raised in LA, finished my 20th season as a Clipper fan. Been covering the team for 5 years on my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, and 3 years right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube for all things LA Clippers. Get us up to 8,000 subscribers, hit the notification bell, and of course, you can listen wherever you get your podcasts. In this episode, we're going to be talking about what we learned from the Oklahoma City Thunder winning the championship this year, and we're going to start with reacting to it, what I think the main thing about the last 5 champions really is, and then the Oklahoma City Thunder and their defense, and of course, the way they built their team and how young it was. Initial reaction. It hurts. I'm not going to ignore it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. The Thunder winning the championship hurts, especially seeing a player that we drafted win Finals MVP and go on this incredible run and having one of the best seasons in NBA history. It hurts. Now, of course, we never thought he would be that. I don't think anybody really thought he would be that, but I think we all knew he would be good. If I'm Lawrence Frank, I still make the move every single time. I really do. If I'm Kawhi Leonard, I definitely don't ask for another star on the way to the team because, I mean, you didn't need to do that, and it killed our flexibility in the future if he ever wanted to go, if the team ever wanted to help him out in a different way. I just think, it's one thing to sign with a team in free agency, but it's another thing to sign with a team and then say, I need this other guy to sign. It's just leveraging your power, and I think a lot of people say that we should have called Kawhi's bluff because he was never going back to Toronto. He was never going to join LeBron. But I don't know. At the time, no superstar of that stature had ever signed with the Clippers in free agency like that. You had to do whatever you could to get him to sign. It hurts, though. I mean, I'm not going to be one of those guys that tells you, the fan, to not care or to get over it. I mean, we knew that this day might come with the Thunder win the championship with the guy that we gave them as the centerpiece. And then, of course, the pick that we gave them, it turned into Jalen Williams. Now, it's not guaranteed that we would have picked Jalen Williams, but it definitely does sting because now we know that they've won the trade. And, I mean, this could just be the beginning. You know what I'm saying? The draft capital that they have, we don't have much. Of course, although a special day on Wednesday, the NBA draft, I will be at the Intuit Dome, actually, with a little viewing party for our 30th pick in the draft. So that should be interesting. But, yeah, it hurts. I'm not going to sugarcoat and say it doesn't. And I think there's something to be said about the last 5 NBA champions. I think the super team era is over. Just stacking stars and talent doesn't work. You look at 2021, Giannis, a homegrown Milwaukee Bucks player, Chris Middleton, who was traded from the Detroit Pistons at a very, very early time of his career and ended up spending so many years, 11 and a half to be exact, with the Milwaukee Bucks. And then what did they do to get over the hump? They picked up Drew Holiday. Boom. The core, though, of Giannis and Chris Middleton, after losing to Toronto, after losing in the bubble, they got over the hump. And if you want to go further back, I mean, they lost to the Celtics in round 1 in 2018. They lost to the Toronto Raptors in round 1 in 2017. 2022 Warriors, that's a team that obviously, it's Steph, Draymond, Clay, those guys, built that core together. That was kind of a last dance kind of run for that squad. Not a last dance, but like the last title for that squad. And then you have the Nuggets, who went through their trials and tribulations and were built with 2 homegrown stars. If you go to their top 4 players on that title run, Michael Porter Jr. is another one of those guys that was a homegrown guy. And, they lost to the Lakers in the conference finals, and they lost to the Portland Trailblazers in 7 games at home in 2019. And then, of course, 2 years without Jamal Murray. So they'd went through their trials and tribulations, but got it done. Then the Celtics, Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum drafted by the Celtics, lost in the conference finals to the Cavs, then lost the following year with Kyrie Irving to the Bucks, then lost in the bubble in the conference finals to the Heat, then they lost in the first round to Brooklyn, then they lost in the championship, and then the conference finals again. They went through their trials and tribulations, and they picked up those guys like Drew Holiday. It's funny that Drew Holiday was part of two of those championship teams, that missing piece, but Derek White, Kristaps Porzingis to help get them over the hump. And now this year, the Oklahoma City Thunder traded for SGA before the 2019-20 season, had several years of being horrible, getting the picks for Jalen Williams, for Chet Holmgren, because they weren't good. And then we knew in 2023, when they ended up getting that 10 seed, you had Chet back into this mix with this young team, they'll be pretty good. But then they got the 1 seed last year. And we're like, whoa. So the moral of the story is, the way that teams are being built, the championship teams are being built, is homegrown, develop, go through your trials and tribulations as a team, and get over the hump. And I'm sorry to say that is not anywhere near what we are right now. We are a team that's led by 2 guys that had Hall of Fame careers before they even showed up, on the older side. And one of them has always had a question mark if he could do it. The other one has a question mark if he can still do it, Kawhi Leonard. We are very far from, and that's not to say that in 2026, it's going to be a team that, is homegrown primarily and goes through their trials and tribulations together. But maybe it is. At this point, it feels like Jalen Brunson's always been a Knick, although he was a member of the Mavericks, of course. But it feels like he's been adopted by New York. And I'm not saying the Knicks are going to win the championship next year, but I think they've got a decent chance to get to the finals. I mean, honestly, it's not even worth talking about next year. But I'm just saying this. The formula of what's winning in this decade, in this new era, in this new CBA era, is not just stacking the deck. The last super team to really win was those Warriors teams. And 3 of those guys, by the way, of their big 4, were homegrown talent. So the ones that were all coming from other places, or primarily coming from other places, were the 2016 Cavs. You look at the Thunder, they are homegrown for the most part. And of course, we helped them do it. But what I'm trying to say is, the way our team is built, I don't think we're winning the championship. And I think when we do win a championship one day, maybe it will be like this, where we have our own core that we've built up. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm trying to be not. Is it negative to say the truth? I don't know. It's I don't see an old team winning the championship in this era. This is not how this goes. We, one day, and it's going to be a while because of the position that we're in due to this trade that we made, to be able to really pivot, I think, and build from the ground up and try to, build through the draft. And here's the thing. Clippers have not shown that they're a good drafting team, in the last 15, 20 years. But maybe getting a trade for a young player that we develop, I don't know. I just feel as though there's a development aspect to every championship team of this decade, and we are not doing that because we have no way to do it. You know what I'm saying? I don't think playing Jordan Miller and Kobe Brown, you need a superstar. You need a Tatum, Shea, Jokic. You know what I'm saying? A Giannis. These are generational guys. We don't have that. So that's what I'm learning, and that's what I've learned from this, another year of a team winning a title that was essentially came up together, went through their losses and then got over the hump. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I think in a cliche way, that's the right way to do it. That's the way you want to do it as a franchise, as a fan base. And I envy that, and hopefully that we can get that one day. But I think right now the thing is we're just going to be a competitive team next year. We maybe can make some noise, but the title, not for me. But here's the thing. There are a lot of other teams, let's say you go to Locked On Blazers, for example, with my boy Mike Richmond. You think he's saying the Blazers are going to win a title next year? Hell no. So it's just some teams have it, some teams don't. I think we're a lot closer to winning a title than a lot of other teams in terms of our team now. But title, I don't know. Coming up, though, going to be talking about a more specific basketball aspect as to what the Thunder showed that always holds true when it comes to title teams 99% of the time. I got to tell you a little something about Open Phone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need, maybe for a plumber or a service provider. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on. That's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the number one business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. Open Phone lets me manage business calls because, between the club team that I run and dime dropper, you just never know who's going to call. And Open Phone lets me manage business calls and texts from a single app. Open Phone is offering my listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right. So the Oklahoma City Thunder are the champions for the first time in their history. And no, we are not counting the 79 Sonics ring that was won by Dennis Johnson, Gus Williams, and downtown Freddie Brown and the Jack Sigma and those guys for the Thunder. Absolutely not. That's not happening. So this is their first title. And, we've seen a couple of teams win their first titles recently. The Nuggets, the Thunder, the Raptors, the Cavs in the last 10 years. And it's just like, just waiting for our turn. It's like, I remember when there was like 14 teams that had won a title. And I count Atlanta, even though they won in St. Louis, and that's Bob Pettit, shout out to Bob Pettit. But the Atlanta Hawks, the Atlanta fan base has never celebrated a basketball title. The Sacramento Kings have never celebrated even a championship appearance. So I don't count them as winning titles. So there was one point where it was like 14 teams that hadn't won. And now we're at about 20, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. 20 teams that have. Honestly, let's just rattle them off while we're here. By the way, the draft on Wednesday, we'll be having some coverage of that. We have the 30th pick. And then the second round, we have the 51st pick. So we have 2 picks. Oh, our future star at 30, baby. But anyway, so when you look at the teams that haven't won a ring, it's the Minnesota Timberwolves, your LA Clippers, the Phoenix Suns, the Indiana Pacers, if we're talking just NBA. Let me do the East first. The Indiana Pacers, the Orlando Magic, the Atlanta Hawks, the Brooklyn Nets, ABA they've won, but not in the NBA. Charlotte Hornets. 5 teams in the East haven't won a title. In the West, you have us, Minnesota, Memphis, Sacramento, Phoenix, and New Orleans, and Utah. The Utah Stars have won, not the Jazz. So 7 teams in the West, and then 5 teams in the East. So we're talking 12 teams that still haven't won a title. So it's no shame in our game, but we've never made it to the championship. That's something that sucks. But hey, let me tell you something, as Charles would say. One big reason that the Thunder won the championship, best defense in the league. Some were saying one of the best defenses of all time. In terms of relative defensive rating, they were historic. Defense wins chips. I mean, I know that sounds like a cliche, and people that are pro-offense always say, you need offense too. Yeah, of course you do. But if you're not a great defensive team, you're not winning a championship. If you're not a good defensive team, you're not winning. If you're not a great defensive team, you have a small chance of winning. If you're not a good defensive team, you have 0 chance of winning. And I think regular season defensive rating doesn't always matter. It also just really matters how you defend in the playoffs. Because like the Denver Nuggets weren't a great regular season defensive team, but in the playoffs, you saw Aaron Gordon as that low man. You saw Jokic and Murray not getting exposed in 2023. You saw Bruce Brown, KCP, and Christian Brown at the point of attack putting in work. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think the worst defensive team I've seen win a title was the Cavs in 2016 because they really just they had Iman Shumpert, LeBron was fantastic, but they had some guys that weren't necessarily great defenders. J.R. Smith, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love, and they got it done and were so clutch. And LeBron had one of the best 3-game stretches anyone's ever played. But the Thunder showed us once again that defense reigns supreme, and I think that's where they had the advantage. In addition to having the best player in the series, but that's one thing that we've gotten right is that we're building, I think shifting into becoming more of a defense first team was part of the reason why we won 50 games this year. Was, we were able to stay in games because you just never know when your shot's not going to fall. But you can always stay in games by being a good defensive team. When you look at like how the league was built in terms of like champions, the first dynasty, what was it? In the shot clock era, Russell Celtics, defensive rating, first in defensive rating every single season. And it's not coincidence that they won all those rings. You know what I'm saying? When the Knicks in the 70s, like they had five guys that could guard in the starting lineup. With Dick Barnett, Clyde Frazier. I've seen those teams play. Bill Bradley, Willis Reed, and DeBusschere. They had no weak links in the starting lineup defensively. Like that's the formula. Even the 72 Lakers, they might not have had, I don't think Gail Goodrich was that great of a defender from the tape I've watched, but you got Jerry West, you got Wilt. You know what I'm saying? You have guys that can guard. They put it all together that season in 72. And then you look at the Bulls in the 90s with lockdown defense. So, and again, an underrated part of Showtime is, the Michael Coopers of the world. And they went out there and defended, and they were able to create offensive opportunities with their transition. They were able to create transition offense opportunities with their defense. So, the Spurs, of course, you got to be a great defense. So whenever we do have a championship team, I think defense is very important. But the Thunder just further prove that you got to be locked down. You got to be a great defensive team. And one day I'm going to do a study of it, like, how many of those championship teams from, let's say, Bill Russell's first ring all the way to now, like, what is the average league rank in defensive rating versus the league rank, like the average champion's offensive rating, or where they ranked in offensive rating. And I guarantee you, most of them are top 10 defenses. Defense wins at every level because it'll keep you in games, even when your shot's not falling. And guys like Lou Dort, Alex Caruso, those guys, they were huge for them. And we have some of those guys like Derek Jones, Chris Dunn. I mean, I think the next step for our defense is getting a guy that can protect the rim behind Zubats, just another big body that's better than a Drew Eubanks that can relieve him a little bit so we don't have to be so dependent on Zoo. And then getting a forward that makes us even bigger, even more athletic, and then lets Kawhi Leonard slide down and maybe not have to rotate at the rim as much. So we can make our defense even better. Of course, we were third in defensive rating this year, or fourth. Let me double check that. But the Thunder were first by a significant margin. So, we have to strive to be even a little bit better. Let's see. We were third in defensive rating behind Orlando and OKC. And OKC was number one in the league with 106.6 defensive rating. Best defensive team in the league wins the chip. Offensive rating, they were, let's see, fifth. I know that was in the playoffs. Offensive rating, the Thunder were third in the league. So they were third in offensive rating and first in defensive rating. So, it's a balance. But they were great in both. And then the Celtics, last year, they were first in offensive rating, second in defensive rating. So, elite. Denver Nuggets, when they won the championship, fifth in offensive rating. And as I said, in the playoffs, they were in the regular season, they were 15th in defensive rating. But in the playoffs, they took that to another level, and they were fourth in defensive rating in the playoffs. Funny enough, the LA Clippers of 2023 that played without Kawhi Leonard and Paul George were second in the NBA playoffs in offensive rating that year. Of course, only a 5-game sample size, but, just absolutely huge. But yeah, defense wins. I know that sounds cliche, but it's not a cliche. It's a real thing. Defense wins. The Golden State Warriors, when they won in 2022, they were second best defense in the NBA. They actually weren't even that great offensively that year. And yeah, Milwaukee Bucks were a top 10 defense when they won the championship, and actually a top 5 offense. But yeah, and the Lakers, 2020 Lakers, weren't a fantastic offensive team. You know what I'm saying? The Clippers we were the second best offense in the league that year by offensive rating. Lakers were 11th, but they were third in defensive rating. And in the playoffs, they were actually 6th in defensive rating. Toronto was number 1. But it also has to do with who you play. You know what I'm saying? That they played against the Magic, I think, in the first round, or the Nets in the first round, I believe. And then they played against the Celtics. So, but yeah, defense wins. Defense wins. And if we can improve our defense by getting a backup big and a power forward, we'll be closer to being maybe second in defensive rating, and maybe knocking on that OKC door. But coming up, one of the biggest things I noticed about the Thunder that we just need to figure out how we can get more of, and I don't know how. But coming up, going to talk about that. I got to tell you a little something about Wayfair. There's nothing like stepping into your own outdoor space and feeling like you've escaped to a personal oasis. We bought a nice outdoor chair from Wayfair. We also got the what you put under the TV, a little stand from Wayfair. So Wayfair's been really clutch for me. And Wayfair's made it easy to turn it into a space that feels like yours in our new house. Comfortable, stylish, and ready for summer. Wayfair has everything you need to level up your outdoor space or indoor space. Conversation sets, outdoor bars, fire pits, hot tubs, gazebos, everything. What's your style? My style leans, it's a new building that we moved into, so more modern, bright colors, something that goes well with the natural light. Don't wait. Make your outdoor space your dream oasis today with Wayfair and enjoy it all summer long. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop a huge outdoor selection. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. All right. So another huge reason I think the Thunder won the chip is their youth. These were two of the youngest teams to be in the finals. It was the youngest finals since the 1977 Blazers Sixers series. And you have to go that far back. Experience has mattered in the playoffs. And these were two of the most inexperienced teams I've seen in the finals ever. They only really had one playoff trial and tribulation, which was last year. Pacers lost in the conference finals to Boston. OKC lost in the second round to Dallas. Before that, they were, the Thunder lost in the play-in game to Minnesota, and the Pacers didn't even make the play-in. So they didn't really have that, long of a road to get here, but they're young. And the biggest thing that stuck out to me is not like the pace they played at, but the endurance, the stamina. Like SGA, he was relentless in terms of scoring, and how much he was handling the ball and taking 28 shots. When I talk about Kawhi and emptying the clip, this is part of what I mean. And I straight up and of course, seeing different coverages and whatnot, but it's not like SGA wasn't seeing help defense. SGA just has more stamina right now. He's younger. He hasn't been through the insane surgeries that Kawhi Leonard has been through. And it's hard for me to believe that Kawhi Leonard, after everything he's been through, can do 4 series like that at that level. The endurance of SGA to be attacking downhill after all the miles he's put in this season in a game 7 like that. I mean, it was remarkable. He didn't shoot efficiently, but he emptied the clip. And I'm always going to take that. It's what Kawhi did in game 7 for Toronto. It's a theme. Forget your efficiency. Empty the clip. We wanted SGA in game 7 had the mentality of we're going to live and die on my shoulders. And that's how it should be in a game 7. You got to be a little selfish. But they had youth. I mean, Kaysen Wallace, Aaron Wiggins. Chet Holmgren is a second-year player. Really is third, but second year because he missed that first year. Jalen Williams, third-year player. I mean, this was the youngest team to win a chip since the Blazers in 77. So younger, it's a younger league, more now than ever before. You have one-and-dones coming in. You have guys that aren't even going to college, So it's a young league. The vets are getting fizzled out of the league, which I don't know if it's a great thing. You saw what some of those vets like Malik Beasley, Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr. did for Dennis Schroeder, even did for the Pistons this year. They got some adults in the building. And I think the same with, Dylan Brooks coming to Houston the last couple of years, Fred VanVleet. I think that really helped them. But we need to get younger somehow. And I'm probably going to do an episode later this week on can we get younger with the players that we have? Can we try to start developing? It's just a matter of when you have a win-now team, do you have young enough guys, good enough young guys, I should say, that can fit into a championship rotation and contribute, or a championship contending rotation and contribute, like a Christian Brown, like a Jordan Poole, for example. I love Jordan Miller, but I don't know if he's proven that. I like Trenton Flowers, but I don't know if they've proven that. But also, Tyler needs to give them a chance. Now, the thing about it is, if you give them a chance, you have to let them screw up. And that might hurt the team that wants to win now. And you have guys like James Harden and Kawhi Leonard whose clock is ticking. So the timelines don't always align. So that's a tough thing. But we need to get younger to win a chip. I mean, the league is going younger. The champions are getting younger. You saw the energy that the Thunder had. We're old. We're old and slow. Our two best players are going to be 34 and 36 years old. We're old. We can be good. But We're one James Harden injury away from being But again, let's see what we do this offseason. I think that matters as well. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of moves being made. You know, the Celtics trading Drew Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis. You had McCollum going over to Washington. And then, of course, the big one, Kevin Durant over to the Rockets. I just did an episode on that yesterday. But moral of the story, the champions of this decade are winning with homegrown talent, get a couple of role players around them, but developing players. I mean, look at all the players that Thunder did an amazing job developing. Cason Wallace, Aaron Wiggins, Isaiah Joe, Jalen Williams from Arkansas, J-Dub, Chet Holmgren. And by the way, shout out to Isaiah Hartenstein, man. He deserves it. It's unfortunate to see him go. To see him win a championship with another team. One of the most beloved, in my opinion, one-year Clippers of all time. Paul George and Kawhi Leonard wanted a point guard so bad, and it got Lawrence Frank to do a ridiculous move like that, play John Wall instead of Hartenstein. I don't think we would have had Hartenstein, but that 2023 season would have been so different if we had the best center rotation in basketball with Isaiah Hartenstein and Zoo. It doesn't surprise me at all that Hartenstein is playing this way and won a championship as a big piece. I mean, it's just, God. One day I hope we will be rewarded for this, Clipper Nation. I mean, this is tough. This is tough. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And I'm not going to tell you to not feel a certain way or get over it. Like, no, like this happened. Like it really happened. The Thunder won a championship with SGA. But we got to get younger. You know, we got to develop. And hopefully, I'm not saying that just because it's happened 5 years in a row means that next year we're going to have a champion that's like, I don't know, like the Cavs, for example, who Darius Garland and Evan Mobley have grown there, and they got Donovan Mitchell. And then, I mentioned the Knicks earlier. But besides Jalen Brown, I mean, all those guys have not been homegrown there. I don't know if the Knicks are going to win, honestly. OKC is the favorite. I mean, no doubt about it. You know what I'm saying? Who's going to respond to that? The NBA has never felt more wide open year after year because there's just not that many teams that are like staying together. You know what I mean? And like the Spurs or the Lakers with Kobe, or, you know, even teams like LeBron's Cavs, like teams that are staying together or the Warriors with that continuity. You know what I mean? I guess the Nuggets last 3 years are part of that. And they've been, a 7-game series 2 years in a row against the Thunder and the Wolves. But see, like someone like Minnesota, maybe it's next year's their year to break into it with Ant-Man. You know, he's been their homegrown guy. Brought in Gobert as that piece. But we shall see. Jaden McDaniels, for example, I believe he was drafted by the Lakers, but he's been on the Timberwolves his entire career. You know what I mean? So we'll see. I'm just saying that it feels like when we win a championship, we're going to have to probably develop a little bit and go through it that way. Defense still reigns supreme. Number one defense won the championship, and you got to be a little younger. You know, that's what I've learned. I mean, when you look at the Thunder and in the specific, you need a great number one option though, for sure. But if you look at the specifics of it all, they had rim protection and point of attack, and almost none of their rotation players are bad defenders. SGA is good. Jalen Williams is great. Chet Holmgren is amazing. Isaiah Hartenstein is great. Caruso is all-world. Lou Dort is amazing. He's a scumbag in terms of like how dirty he plays, but he's a great defender. Cason Wallace is fantastic. I'd have to watch Aaron Wiggins a little bit closer to know how good of a defender he is, but you essentially don't have bad defenders in their lineup. Same thing I said about the 2019 Raptors. Makes you think a little bit. I mean, how many bad defenders did the Celtics have last year? Sam Hauser wasn't a bad defender if you watched. Peyton Pritchard may have been their worst, but he's not bad. In the previous year, the worst defenders were Jokic and Murray, and they held their own. 2022, Steph Curry's probably the worst defender. He held his own. And he's that guy on offense. How many bad defenders did the Bucks have when they won the championship? You know, very few. Lakers, barely any. They had none, really, that was in the rotation at the time. Everybody was defending. So, something to consider. Norman Powell, Bogey, James Harden. Just saying. I mean, you can't have all three. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod. Subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, for even more LA Clipper and LA sports content. Did a more extensive video on the Thunder winning the championship and the trades that are being made around the league on my Dime Dropper channel, so just check that out. And of course, Locked On NBA, Locked On Clippers. Subscribe to all the Locked On channels, especially this one. Hit the notification bell so you know every single time we post a video all summer long. We got a draft on Wednesday. And yeah, make sure you listen wherever you get your podcast. If you can't watch on YouTube, it's always available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get them. The age-old proverb continues. Go Clippers.